Welcome to No One Can Know About This, a podcast where we play every Final Fantasy. I'm Jeff Ekman.
And I'm Ryan Kazmiski.
And here we go, a special bonus updates episode, and we're going to talk a bunch about FF7 Rebirth.
Yeah, it'd been a while since we talked to you, so we wanted to update you all on how we're doing. We got a lot of concerned emails about the fires in Los Angeles.
Yep.
We want to let you know that we're both fine. That's pretty belated at this point.
Yeah.
But we're luckily okay. We're not too terribly affected.
Yeah, had to evacuate for a little bit, but we're lucky. We wanted to mention a good friend of ours, Ryan Kunkelman. He lost his house in the fires in Altadena. He's a really great guy. He helped make the 99 potions, but a bitch ain't one.
Yeah, he's a longtime friend of the show.
He actually was my old next-door neighbor when I was living in Silver Lake. So when we started NoCat, he was on the other side of the wall, listening to our stupid cackling. He's a wonderful guy.
We'll direct you in the description to his GoFundMe.
Yeah,
if you'd
in the
like
show
to
notes,
donate.
There's a GoFundMe for Ryan to help him and his family. He has a 7-month-old kid and 2 dogs, and they are going to have to look for a new home.
Yeah. And, you know, there's a lot of people who need help, so if you don't feel comfortable donating to an individual, do a Google search for the California Fire Foundation. We hear a reputable place to donate if you would like to help the relief efforts in Los Angeles.
Yep.
Yeah, it was crazy to wake up at like 3 a.m. to ashes raining down and like a black sky.
Yeah.
And there was green lightning.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I was woken up by the sirens saying, this is an evacuation order. Leave immediately at 4 a.m.
Yeah. I was not officially evacuated, but I wasn't going to wait for one either because that just sounded...
You were close, and the air was bad.
We were both really close, yeah. But luckily we had places to go, and we were both fine, and our properties are okay.
The banana trees, though... As an update, we gotta tell the people they're okay.
They're alive.
The winds came that night. The winds were so much more insane the night of the fire starting, and it actually destroyed this like metal tent that I have that's like built into my patio in the backyard.
Gazebo. You had a little like covering for your
that was just
table.
Destroyed by the wind, and the banana trees are effectively shredded.
Yeah, they're alive still, and since they're kind of just like grass, they might recover.
Like they seem still okay.
Before the wind, they were also experiencing something that, you know, this strain of banana isn't grown much because of something called wilt. Fusarium wilt. And
we were afraid that they got it.
Some things that could be considered wilting on them. So we don't know. We don't know the exact status of the banana trees, but
I think they're okay. As things warm up, I think they're going to recover, but
I do too.
There's like only a few leaves left after the winds, and they are not looking structurally strong.
They're kind of like big, sick sticks jutting out of the ground.
Yeah, leaning over, like they've now, the wind caused them a big lean. Also, we wanted to tell everybody, if you've been listening over the show since the end of Season 7, you probably noticed that there's now ads on the public feed.
Yeah, we've finally implemented ads.
We resisted it for as long as we could.
I don't have anything to say about it. There's ads now.
We just wanted to at least tell you guys that that's how things are, and it's to support the show. If you want the show ad-free, please sign up for the Patreon. We will have the free feed there.
Yeah.
But we just wanted to tell you guys. Also, while we're at it, there was one correction we wanted to make, or addendum to the finale of Season 7. In the very end of Final Fantasy IX, there's a voiceover narration through the epilogue. And in the episode, we couldn't figure out who it was that was speaking, but we now realize it was Vivi. And we wanted to tell you all that that was something we should have figured out. It was Vivi doing the final narration.
Yeah, I can't even remember well enough to like talk about this at all. I feel like someone sent us something saying they thought it was Vivi, and we were like, that must be correct.
Yeah, that's definitely what it is. And we were like, oh man, how did we not catch that? But now it's been long enough that we're like, I don't even remember what that was.
I don't know what that means, that it's Vivi. Like, I don't have anything to say about it.
We should go back and listen to the episode, and then we'll know.
Well, but I thought he was dead, was the implication at the end.
Yeah, it is.
I thought that's like, what we didn't get, is that, like, Vivi's not in the ending, but his kids are.
And I think we were like, who is supposed to be speaking all this kind of poetic nonsense? And It's been too long now. I
Because
don't
now
even
we're
remember, but I
saying
believe
this, and
that
I'm like, this could be wrong. Like,
I'm
I don't
pretty
know
sure
that. How
this
do
is
we know
right.
that
I
it's
feel
Vivi?
confident.
Why do we think it's Vivi?
I put a note in my notes to say this on this episode, and
That's what I mean. It's like,
trust my past self for doing the due diligence to mean that note was
we
meant to be
can't even
done.
remember why we think that, though.
Somebody got in touch, and then we were like, "Oh."
Anyway,
yeah.
that's the correction.
So that's
at some point
that was important.
we had thought that was important to say.
Yeah. Another quick little thing. One of our favorite filmmakers and patron saint of the show passed away, David Lynch.
Yes, rest in peace, David Lynch.
We wanted to thank him for all of his wonderful work.
Huge influence on us personally. There's not a lot of artists out there with his level of just integrity and originality, and his whole philosophy on life really colored the way that I view things. So
Go look up his How to Make Quinoa.
yeah, he
YouTube
has
video.
his video on YouTube about how to make quinoa. It's one of my favorite things of all time.
So we wanted to thank you, David Lynch, for everything.
Yes. I had to shout that out. But mostly, our playthrough of Final Fantasy VII Rebirth has finally concluded.
Yeah,
and
on the Patreon, you can now go right now and see our reaction to the finale. And in the public feed on YouTube, we are now releasing the beginning of that playthrough. So
Yeah.
if you are not a patron, you can go watch the playthrough starting now. But if you are a patron, you can watch the whole thing right away. And I also want to note really quickly, this is going to be a spoilery discussion. So if you haven't played the game or don't want to have the ending spoiled, stop listening.
So it's extremely belated, but we wanted to just discuss and collect some of our final thoughts on that game and where that remake project is as a whole.
Right.
And one thing that's interesting about it is like it's like one of the rare properties. Listeners of this show have probably noticed that I'm hypercritical of like everything. Like I don't even trust my own feelings about things. And this game was one of the rare properties that was it just like I couldn't view it critically until I was done with it for a while. Like, even while playing it, it just bypassed all of that, and I was unable to evaluate it even really as it was going.
Well, yeah, like, and we'll get into it for real in a minute, but I remember feeling like, okay, the pacing of this is objectively bad, and I don't care.
Yeah, there's so much about it that I think is maybe objectively bad.
But
you know?
it's
but
like
I didn't
so
give a single
overstuffed
shit.
that I was
give
like,
a
I
single
didn't want
shit about
it to
any
not
of
be.
that.
You know,
I
another
absolutely
thing
loved it.
is the context of we had just played Final Fantasy 16, which we had the opposite reaction to in almost every way.
Well, I think from a design standpoint, they are opposite games.
I think so too. Like 16 does not love Final Fantasy, and it's kind of like, what if all that was not in these games? And we, you know,
just comparing like the media lead up to the release of both games.
Right.
Final Fantasy 16, they had many press conferences where they would get on stage to tell you that you don't like Final Fantasy games,
Right.
and you're going to be very happy that they've taken everything you love out of this one.
Yeah.
Because like they know what a burden it is to play the games, so they've made this one stupid as fuck, and it's going to be awesome.
They were doing a lot of press work that was causing articles to be written that were like, what is a Final Fantasy game anyway?
Which drove, so like before that game even came out, I had already been driven up the wall by all this fucking gaslighting.
Yeah.
About like, I don't even know where this idea comes from, but like, well, they can't make a turn-based game.
Right.
Like,
There's
what
like
the
this
fuck are you
idea
talking
that, like,
about?
You know, the things that you can and can't do in gaming, and
yeah, and
that's also well, that was also said in the year that Baldur's Gate 3 came out, you know?
Yeah, exactly. It's like the same year that like the biggest RPG of all time comes out. Anyway, all that aside,
I think it's worth noting that 16 doesn't have any side quests, or it does have side quests. It doesn't have any mini games. It doesn't have a lot of things that it doesn't have an airship. It doesn't have
to
a lot
complete
of
my
things.
thought, in the lead up to the 7 remake,
Yes.
they were just constantly showing more and more of like, can you believe this is in the game?
Yeah.
And this is in the game, and we've added this, and look at
we've
this
got-
mini game. What is
and-
that mini game?
and
You can
Cloud's
play
on a
the
Segway.
piano.
What does that mean?
Look, they're wearing bathing suits.
Yeah.
Oh my god! Like, look at all of the different stuff that's going to be
Yeah.
in this game, and and they delivered on that.
Yes.
So extremely hard.
Well, because there's so much delight in this game, and that was there was like a philosophy, and we'll move on from 16 in a minute, but there was a philosophy in that game that was like, for it to be serious, everybody would be serious. And like, no, like, it's like a really intense world, so nobody would be finding joy in little things. It's not believable.
I don't want to rag on this anymore. I've got to control myself.
Well,
but
I bring it up because it was like a lot of the experience of playing FF7 Rebirth, I kept being like more mad at 16 in retrospect because I had just played it and was like, see, you can fill a game full of
I was
bullshit.
just happy that it came after 16. We didn't have to wait like 10 years for anher Final Fantasy game.
That's a good point, too.
That was different than 16.
Yeah,
so it's like
we got both of these things, so like, whatever.
Square Enix is a difficult company to love sometimes, but they're serving... I don't know who they're serving with 16, but look, they're serving different tastes.
I think they were trying to broaden it, make it more action. I don't know. It's not where I think it should go, but also I'm 38.
I just think third-person action games suck for the most part. Like,
they're great for 2 hours, and then you're like, well,
look, we're not talking about that game. We're talking about 7 Rebirth. Sorry.
I'm sorry. But that's what's so weird about this. So I do think that some of the extra forgiveness that I was giving to 7 Rebirth was a little bit in the context of how mad I was about 16, and I was like, this is just so different from that. How can I say this is bad?
So I think... for me, it's that the stuff they nailed in 7 Rebirth, let me get that out of the way. Like, I think, for the most part, the dialogue is really good.
Really good.
And the character animations are incredible.
Amazing.
And, like,
oh my god, every time they were touching each other, I was like, oh my god, look, they're clapping each other on the shoulder.
The world feels complete and, like, explorable, and, like, it was like seeing that shitty world map in high def, like it really gave that feeling of exploring it. So then once you got really deep in and like they would just completely blow story moments, it just didn't even affect my enjoyment of it because like the combat is so good. Like the moment-to-moment gameplay in it is so great.
Right.
That like...
and I'm bringing baggage to it. Like there's a lot of headcanoning that you can do because you know the actual story and you know the original. You're like bringing all of this stuff to what you're seeing in a way that's satisfying. But like, I wonder, I remember we were playing through it, and when we were in the Junon section, which is like the second big area, and we were having to activate a bunch of towers, I was like, my brother loved FF7 Remake. He had never played the original. I bet you he's going to fall off this game if he doesn't make it to Junon. Because he's going to be in this thing and he's going to be like, I've activated towers in video games before, and I just got to go through all these checklists and stuff, and that was exactly what happened. He wants to go back into it, but I'm like, just get past the Junon because I think it'll pick back up and you'll love it, but I did really feel the pacing was at its worst there. Yeah,
I want to dive into that more, but first I just want to say some favorite moments of mine, like the gold saucer. I thought
unbelievable representation of the gold saucer.
They turned that stupid little play you go to on the date into something so stupid that it's insane. Like a sight to behold. Like,
it's maybe the hardest I've laughed at a video game in years. I was laughing
throughout that. It was like exactly what I want out of like a Final Fantasy game that's taking things too far. Is this like, if you don't remember, it's like you go see this virtual reality play.
You all go to a play, and it's theater. You sit in the theater and then you put on a VR headset.
You all go to a theater, put on a VR headset, and then you are in the play, and it's completely unclear if you're watching yourself or if...
Is that what the other audience is seeing?
Thinking you're acting. Like, none of it even is explained or makes any sense.
Is everybody in the play? In their own plays?
I love that.
Is this a communal experience? I don't know.
But it's like the longer I've gotten away from it, because like the moment-to-moment enjoyment was so good.
Yeah.
One of my big criticisms is I think the open world structure could have just been better. Like it's very by the numbers, and beyond being by the numbers, they lead you by the hand to everything.
Way too much.
You're never like actually discovering anything. It's more like, oh, I found a baby chocobo and he's gonna rock me over to the thing
like,
I want.
Oh, there's the owl. We got to follow him over to the other thing. And it was like, oh, I could have just explored this area and found all these things.
And there is like so much of that. And all of that has to do with Chadley, who's like a new character, and he's doing something that I thought in this game they would sort of tie Chadley into the main story in some way, or make it like
so much.
But it's like this other thing that's bigger than the main story. And effectively, like, beyond getting into where I think they made mistakes telling the story, they watered down the main story so much that I would say this is a game about helping Chadley. And the rest of it is sort of like ancillary. Like, it happens so rarely that you're in a cutscene that doesn't have to do with Chadley as opposed to being with Chadley, that, like, to me, what I remember when I think about the game is helping Chadley gather data. That's like the number one memory I have of it.
Because in this chunk of the game in the original, you're trying to find Sephiroth, and you're going through the world, and that's technically what you're doing.
There'll be a
what
scene
you're
where
really
they're like,
doing.
we got to find Sephiroth, and then it's like 30 hours of like Chadley
Cloud,
needs more
I found
data.
information about this giant zoo.
Yeah.
The giant zoo actually in ancient times was defeated by the Junon people. And that's why they fly around all angrily. I'm making this up, but there's similar shit. Like there was like the King Tonberry had some background to it that was
my god, that's another.
All of his people were destroyed.
Yeah, they reveal that the Tonberries like have a long they're like a society that humanity like killed.
Yeah.
And so they're vengeful, which I wasn't ready for. I wasn't expecting that.
Well, that's the thing is like I did love, for better and worse, as we'll get into, this game reveled in every detail that could exist in Final Fantasy VII. You know, on the good sense, it was like they thought about this world so much that they're like, oh man, if you could get frogged, I bet kids would be like getting frogged for fun, and they would have like a little game they play. And I'm like, yeah, that's the kind of shit I want to be doing.
That shit is awesome.
But they fall over themselves, trip over their own dicks in trying to do the big story moments that they've overthought.
Yeah, there was, when I think back on it, all of the biggest story moments from the original game to me, if I'm being honest with myself, I think were like botched here, like entirely. Like even the Dine moment I thought was like completely fucked. Like
the Dine could have been done way better,
so that instead of it being like really hard hitting and emotional, it's just kind of confusing. He turns into like a robot man. Anyway,
I barely remember it, I remember it really well in the original.
Exactly. Like the moments I remember really well in the original are sort of dreamlike, fuzzy, confusing blotches in this.
They did a good job with the date.
The date was great. Yeah, no, I thought the date was good. I thought the gold saucer was really good. It's all like really good, but then like my bigger complaints are like the original game. What I love about it is it has this incredibly potent story about environmentalism and corporate power.
Right.
And these games seem to be stepping away from that and being like, what's actually interesting about this is how we're all at the whims of the multiverse.
Yeah.
And all of that shit is
not working for us.
It can't work.
Well,
there's no way it can work.
Throughout the game, you keep cutting to Zack.
Yeah, man.
Every time it happens, nothing happens in it. No new information.
You stop the story to go be Zack in a world that doesn't make sense. The big reveal at the end of all this is that Zack is in a world that doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
And then he shows up during a boss fight, and then that's it.
It's just...
And I don't know. I mean, like, at that point, it's like, I love this game, but I also don't think it will become the classic that it should be.
Right.
Because it is more concerned with confusing us to make us excited than telling.
Aware that we know what's going to happen.
And that's the thing.
That it's like, we have to not... And it's like, I felt like if you just did what originally happened, that would be so surprising.
Well, and
in a good way.
Is it surprising or not? I mean, it's like when someone puts on a play that's been done before, nobody's fucking worried that no one's going to be surprised. Like, that doesn't make any fucking sense.
Yeah, you're right.
Okay?
In a new Hamlet, they're not like, the ending needs to change because we all know how that ends.
As a storyteller, this is like a philosophy that rubs me in such a wrong way.
Yeah.
Like, I think it is so wrong-headed to destroy the story in favor of like marketing, basically.
Yeah. And I also don't agree that this is a sequel. They can say that, but I really feel like so much of the actual experience of this is the updated version of playing FF7.
But here's where you and I get into arguments, because I don't know what the fuck you're talking about, because it's a sequel. And like it happens in a world where the other thing has happened, and they show us all of that.
Yeah.
And, you know, like, that's all in the game. It's not like they just said it.
Except that all the story beats still happen the way that the story beats...
Except they don't, because the end biggest story beat is like They don't even... Okay. So, I mean, I don't know if we
get
want
why they would want to do it this way, maybe, is the thing. Is like, I just keep coming back to, like, I'm like, but what you're doing is remaking it, and in a remake, you change things. And so, yeah, it's different.
Yeah, but it's like, I almost can't even talk about it because it makes so little sense.
Well, I'm like, I know that they want to have their remake and not eat it too, or whatever the fuck.
They want to... they want to do that.
I've watched many remakes over my life, and there's usually like some alterations, but the real intention is to tell a new generation of people who didn't experience that story the story in a new way.
Yeah.
And I'm like, this idea that everybody knows FF7's story so well is just like not true.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not true. You and I would have preferred it if they did not do this metaverse watering down nonsense. Because in a big way to me, like what it says to me is I'm like, oh, what I love about that first game is like its message and the story. And then the creators of that game coming and being like, that's not actually what the game is about.
Right.
Like, you're dumb for thinking that this powerful environmental message is what the game is about, because what it's actually about is Sephiroth is so powerful that he can make other universes. And did you know that Aerith is also that powerful, and they're having a chess game between different universes where they're playing a cup game with the white materia, which, like, all
But then you
this...
enter Gengaga. And you're like, oh my God.
Yeah, and you're like, look, we're here. Like, that's the thing, is like, this is a game that, like, I'm trying to grapple with why I love it so much when it pushes all of the buttons of, like, my normal brain being of rejecting it.
Right.
Like outright. Being
Yeah,
like,
well,
this
especially
is a
this
travesty.
multiverse stuff.
Because
like,
I'm sitting here yelling about this game, but if you haven't played this game, you got to go play this game. It's such a good game.
Get it right now.
It's so
play
great.
it right this minute.
And then you can, send us a message yelling about the ending too, because I haven't really met anyone or seen any online dialogue of people who like really defend what they've done to this ending.
It's funny, like people love the game will be like, yeah, but the ending I really don't know. I mean, we'll see what they do next time.
Well, because here, just to break into it, like they take the emotional gut punch of Aerith's death and try to turn it into like a mystery, and not a mystery like in a traditional sense, a mystery in like an Easter egg sense,
in a confusing sense.
In a sense where they want you to go back and be rewatching this and keeping track of like there's materia moving between realities,
and there's stamps. There's stamps all over.
There's
different
and
dogs.
It's just like, it's not interesting.
No.
Okay? Like, just, to me, it's just not fucking interesting because it doesn't mean anything.
Well, that's the thing. The reason that the Aerith death in the original is so important and poignant and long-lasting in storytelling is that I think it really gives the feeling of real death.
Yeah.
Because it's sudden, it's unexpected, and then it's irrevocable and real. And you have to deal with the new world where the person isn't there. But this like touchy-feely, almost like, but like, what if she were to keep living in another world is like just not my shit.
Okay, because like, first of all, they didn't even show us the death. Yeah. They showed us like 5 or 6 realities. Some of which she doesn't die in, some which she does. And then they bring us back to our reality, and it's unclear which one we're in. And all of this, I don't even know what this is in service of, except to end the game on like a question of like, did she really die?
Yeah.
And we'll see. Maybe in the next game, I'll eat my words and be like, oh my God, they were thinking of something brilliant I never could have conceived of. But I don't think that's the case, because this whole game, they were teasing Zack like there was going to be some big thing to do with him,
and there's not.
There's not. It's all just nothing. Like all of that shit with like
every time it would go to Zack, I was like, okay, well, we're going to learn something new about this, and then it was just like, remember that he's there. And then we just continue doing FF7.
It's like if you hadn't played the original and Crisis Core, this whole game you'd be going, who is this guy?
Why do I care?
And I also think it blows the revelation of who Zack is in the original is like hard to even find.
Yeah.
And it's extremely important.
Yeah.
But it's like tiny, and it's not sprinkled throughout the fucking game.
It's not the story of FF7. It's like before it.
Well,
it's
yeah,
like
exactly.
the backstory that led to these events.
And so, like, I feel like telling you who's... Because, like, they also more clearly tell you who Zach is and all this stuff. Like, you go to his house and there it's like, this is who Zach is.
It was my boyfriend or whatever.
It kind of, like, ruins the way the story originally was told. Like,
yeah.
It's almost like they're so worried about delivering on, like, surprises that they intentionally want you to know that none of the original twists are still there or done in the same way. And look, that's all I really have to say about it. I just think it's not very effective.
I think it didn't work.
I just think
I think that they blew the most important moment of the series.
Yeah, I think the storytelling in this game it's like weird because on a micro level, like moment to moment, it feels so good and
because
alive.
The characters are so well defined and the dialogue is actually good, like and there's like jokes being made that are believable. And
like the characters are so good that moment to moment it's just so enjoyable. And then when it's all done and you step back and you're like, what was this about? What did I get out of this? You're like
Chadley knows more about the world intel.
You're like, that kind of sucked. In a lot of ways.
But man, I want to go play
But I want to go play more because the fucking combat system is so
we haven't even talked about... There's so much to talk about.
Oh, man. Another thing, a big change that I think was warranted and they nailed was making Yuffie a much bigger part of the plot.
Yeah.
She's
always
so good. One of my favorite characters in the original.
The stuff with her and Johnny...
Yeah, the stuff with her and Johnny.
The doppelgangers.
The doppelganger
really,
stuff,
really delightful.
Like,
oh, man. Johnny's house being this, like... trophy house for everything that exists in the game is also a really delightful way to like handle all the side quests.
Yeah, like I love turning Johnny, this nothing character who's most notable because of like a mistranslated piece of dialogue that makes you think he's important when he's not.
And now
into
he's
something
now
big is like that's the kind of fan service I love in this game.
Yeah, that's where they overthought it in a good way.
Yeah.
But the combat, they added on these synergy attacks to the remake's combat system, which I think just made it like that much better.
Yeah.
But the only problem is that most of the fights in the game don't last long enough to even engage any of those synergy attacks until you're doing the extra hard stuff where you have to be doing all that,
one
which is
thing
great.
They nailed in this game was that when you get to the end, there's like this amazing diminishing returns of gameplay where it takes longer to do less.
Yeah.
So you're just like end up in these fights where you're just grinding and grinding and grinding and grinding. And it reminds me of the end game of 7 in that it's like feels endless, but it's also better because you're doing new fights every time.
Right. Well, that was the thing. We hit the end after like 150 hours, and there was like 50 plus more hours of extra stuff to do.
Oh, yeah.
Still.
Like, we're still unlocking more fights. Like, every time we go back and play more and do a couple more bonus fights, more
shit shows up, and Chadley's like, oh, you just unlocked the legendary group. And it's like, oh my God.
Another minor quibble about this game. Too many different battle arenas.
Oh my God, the number of battle arenas was crazy.
Like once we got to, I think it's in Gongaga, and you start finding the old Turk training centers. I was like,
another battle
can't
arena.
We find something that's not a battle arena?
That was crazy. And also in some of those challenges, it's just like remixes of the same tough enemies.
Yeah, the end of the gold saucer fights, like the bottom of the list is like the same 4 enemies in different combinations over and over and over again.
And it really reached the point of like, if I have to fight another one of these electric zoos.
These stupid king zoos.
These king zoos, you have to take out their wings when they're charging up their super attack, and like you'd have to, it's just really hard.
They're really hard to fight.
Which is good, because you want that challenge.
Well, look, and it's like at the end of the day, what I most want out of a Final Fantasy game is a combat system so robust that you could hang a dog shit story on it and I will still play it for like 200 hours.
Exactly.
Like, that's what got us into this was we were like, I don't even remember what happened in Final Fantasy 12, but we were gonna have to beat Yasma, you know, like that
became important to do.
And this is the first new Final Fantasy game I've played in a long time that has that.
And I was like, we got to get good enough to fight Gilgamesh.
Like 15 doesn't have it, 16 doesn't have it, but 7 Rebirth has it.
There's like 100 mini games. There's like Rocket League in this game.
Oh my god.
There's like gallery shooters. Of course.
That's a thing I think they nailed. Was like 7 is all about mini games. Load it up with mini games,
and they really did. It almost felt like if anybody on the 16 team thought of a mini game, they were like, "We're taking it. We're putting it in our game. You're not allowed to have that." The other thing I wanted to say about the mini games in this game is that they really dialed in the gold prize, first place, to be you have to have perfected it.
Yeah, you got to be totally optimal.
It's crazy how frustrating it is where like you just barely don't get the gold by like just you missed like a half a second. Like you're just so close, and it was really amazing how much it got me to really want that gold every time.
They know how to get under your skin.
There's another complaint I wanted to... Well, let me say something good, which is like you go into Cosmo Canyon, and it's so stunning to actually see what Cosmo Canyon is like, and the way that the city there is built, and all of the Bugenhagen Planetarium, and the way that they all view the planet and the stars and everything. But they blew Sid.
Oh, yeah. No, we didn't get into that. We're saying the characters are all really well done.
Except for Sid. Who is like, he's supposed to be a very jaded, very angry guy who's like unbelievably mad at Shinra for the stuff that they did and like that what they promised him and what he can't do.
He's abusive to everybody.
He's abusive.
Like that's how he engages.
All of that is gone. He's like a sweet guy.
Yeah, it's like who the fuck is this
who's
guy?
like, yeah, I used to work with Shinra sometimes. They're all right once in a while.
Them boys got their uses. He's smiling all the time.
I think, and does he smoke?
Not in this game.
Not in this game.
I didn't see it. Maybe he does. Maybe he does.
I can't remember at this point.
I mean, yeah, I think that speaks to a bigger quibble I have is that everything is too cheery. Yeah. Like, this world is facing some dark stuff, and, like, you really never... And the first one is like this to some extent, too. Like, it's a goofy world. Like, that's what makes it work so well.
You got Kate Sith running around.
But I could have used some side quests that were, like, about something real. Like, all of them were, like, weird little comedy episodes
I liked most of them, you know, and
I like them all fine, but then, for instance...
Making
like,
the soup, you know, in Kagaga, you gotta go get the mushrooms.
An especially bad one is, in Cosmo Canyon, you run into these... avalanche interns or something that's never fully explained. They never feel like they're a part of this world. And they're going around to these...
They were trying to go legit.
Wells. They're going to these wells that aren't working, that it's never explained what they do, and they're very down on themselves for
Did that tie into the Gears and Gambits thing?
Yeah, that was the Gears, and that was
weird.
You do this mini game that makes no sense to help them do something that you can't understand, and it's like, instead of that... They could have had some orphans whose parents died because of Shinra, and you help them do something and you learn something about Shinra or the world.
Here's an idea. What if all of those orphans grew up together in an orphanage?
Oh, yeah.
Anyway.
But anyway, I just mean there were too many things.
There's something else about side quests, because we haven't talked about Queen's Blood.
Oh, shit.
Like the best card game that Final Fantasy's ever done.
Yeah, the Queen's Blood side quest is pretty fantastic.
And it goes to a crazy story place, which was a surprise in a good way. But then that didn't wind up concluding as satisfying as we were hoping. Halfway through that, we were like, this is gonna fucking tie together in all these ways and be amazing. And then it doesn't.
The whole time, I was convinced that Queen's Blood was Genova somehow.
Right,
and that
which I think would have been good.
Still be the case. But the ending of it isn't really like that.
No, it's not. But there was a moment that was so surprising when, like, we'd been playing a bunch of Queen's Blood, and then it reveals that there's, like, a character who's, like, spiritually behind the cards and stuff, and it, like, goes to a cutscene, and I was like, this game is the best thing I've ever played.
Yeah.
Because what the fuck is happening now? I didn't know that we were going to see more cutscenes after doing this stupid, you know, card game.
Well, that's, like, this game's greatest strength is what the fuck is happening now. Like, I want to feel that in a Final Fantasy game.
That's an important element.
Like, whether or not in the end I think they made a masterpiece or not, I want to feel that throughout, and this game delivered on that.
And regardless of the ending, it ended, and I was like, can 3 come out now, please?
Oh, yeah, it ended.
I want to play the next one.
And I was like, let's fucking do hard mode. I'm ready to play it again, you know? And, like, so these will be games that I think I'm playing for the rest of my life. I'll probably come back to it, you know?
And it's like
that good.
Nothing has ever been done like this before in video gaming, where there's like, I mean, there have been trilogies of games before, but not like this,
No.
where they set out from the first game to make it a trilogy of a story. I'm sure there's really satisfying stuff with the way that Mass Effect and certain other trilogies have like carried their story through each game, but this is just like a type of approach that's never been done.
Well, they've never remade one game into 3 games before.
We've done it with movies.
Yeah, we've
With The Hobbit, things like that.
Yeah, this is a lot like those Hobbit movies, I think.
Yes,
which I
it is.
also love. Like those movies are not like masterpieces or like Lord of the Rings.
But
and
man,
not
they're
potent,
fun, minute to
but they're
minute.
so fun, minute to minute. You're like, oh my god, Radagast, who is this guy? I feel like this game has the vibe of the Hobbit movies.
Which, when
they
they first came out, I was like not into them because I was like, this isn't Lord of the Rings, and like, what's all this? And then I rewatched them like a year or two ago and was like, this is maybe more fun than Lord of the Rings because of how much of a D&D game they're playing.
I completely agree. I think they're not as good as, but more fun than Lord of the Rings.
That was the thinking. You know, I was like, I was surprised by that reaction that I had. So yeah, there's like too much of the game in the way that like there's too much Hobbit.
Well, there's so much right now that we're not even covering because we've forgotten it.
I know. There were like 100 mini games.
I just wanted to get some definitive thoughts out there before the moment had entirely passed us by.
Yeah.
Because, we played a new Final Fantasy game.
Yeah.
It wasn't really on the show. We recorded it for Patreon, but like it's a big event in the Final Fantasy world. And
we needed
damn
to
it,
come
our
and tell
voices
you.
should be added to the pile.
Throw them onto the pile, which will be set ablaze.
It will be set ablaze. But, for now, they're there. Is there anything else I wanted to say about this game? I mean, I'm just amazed that they got it out in the time frame they did. And
That's
that it's
insane.
As fucking huge as it is.
Yeah, we got it 4 years after
and
the
it
first
feels
one.
like, to me, I'm like, there's still some life in that company. Like, they can still do something surprising and amazing.
Yeah, it felt like everybody who wanted to put joy in the game was on this team this year.
Yeah, that's the other stark difference. Is 16 was a very like depressed game through and through, and this one is very just like
almost
oh my
too jubilant.
God, it's almost it's like too much. We'll see. Maybe in the next game, Sid will suddenly become abusive to Shira, and everyone will be like, "What's gotten into Sid?"
It's or like maybe something will come up that will remind him about Shinra 17. And not being
another
able to...
big moment. I wanted to say that for me, disappointing was the Shinra Manor. I thought sucked.
Yeah,
I thought the Shinra Manor sucked. It didn't resemble the original one at all. It was missing a lot of the rooms. There wasn't like
puzzles
a puzzle.
weren't as complicated.
The puzzle wasn't as good.
Yeah,
and Vincent's whole thing was maybe more confusing than it was in the original.
Which I'm down with that. I'm okay with them. Like they were, because the question was like, how are they going to handle this fucking vampire guy? And it's like they just do. They just do it.
He's just there, which is how it is in the original. But they try to explain some more about the Turks and him, and then and then it gets to a point where you're like, why is he coming with us?
Yeah.
I can't wait for all that Lucretia garbage.
I know.
The last one, that is going to be abysmal.
The stuff that's left on the table is so exciting. Like, we have to go to space in the third one, which is just, I cannot wait for them to make that the biggest sequence.
Yeah, it's going to be insane. It's going to be amazing.
We're going to go under the ocean.
And I will probably feel similarly that it's lost its potency.
Yeah, exactly. Because they put too much in. But yeah, like there's just so many cool things to have happen with the meteor and the return to Junon. And then
dude, I cannot wait for the
Midgar is going to be like
fights, man. I can't wait for the weapon fights.
When you play all 3 of the games in a row, to leave Midgar and then play a whole game outside of Midgar and then eventually in the finale return to Midgar.
Returning to Midgar is going to be
like
amazing.
The craziest thing ever.
Can you fucking imagine what Knights of the Round is going to be like?
God, yeah.
Because I mean, what if it's like you summon Knights of the Round and it's like you get a summon that lasts for like a whole 2-hour boss fight?
We have
to keep trading out all the different knights. Like one goes down, another one comes. And
I just want them to continue pushing the throttle all the way down the way they did in Rebirth.
Me too.
For better and worse. Keep going.
Yeah, this is the direction
we're
Final
gonna,
Fantasy
like,
going.
Yeah, Cloud's gonna fall into the live stream, and it's gonna tie together 3 video games in memory in a way that you've never felt before.
Please, for the love of God, make the next numbered entry in Final Fantasy have a combat system like this one. That's full action and full party control at the same time, because it is so fun and so in depth, and you can mess around with your materia.
And this is
forever.
so modern.
Yeah, and it
This
feels
is so
modern and
complicated
fast,
and
and
modern. I
it's
don't
it's
know.
one of the best action systems I've ever played in any game, action or RPG.
So we will wait with bated breath for 17 and Final Fantasy VII Redemption?
What if it's called? Yeah, I don't know what people really think it's going to be called, because it can't be Reunion. They wasted that on the fucking.
There was like
Crisis
a quote
Core
we saw
remake.
at one point that made me laugh really hard of Nomura saying like, we can't use Reunion for the third one because it's already been used for the Crisis Core remake. And I'm like, what?
Yeah, no, it's like they beat him. Team beat him
Why?
to it, and
What-
he was like, "Well, shit, what am I going to do
What am I
now?"
supposed to do? Because that's obviously what it should be called.
Yeah,
You know?
yeah.
It's like where everything, everybody's talking about the reunion. But yeah, the Highwind in the third game, I can't wait to see how they do it.
Well, I mean, I can't wait either, because I am certain they're going to do it after they gave us the tiny Bronco and showed us how they were going to do it.
Yeah.
Where you can, man, it was mind-blowing to me that at the end of the game, they let you drive from Junon to Costa del Sol.
You can continuously traverse the entire world by the end,
Yeah.
and that was like a shock.
The final big step would be, can we circumnavigate a globe?
And I feel like you had the thought at one point that it should be something that's stays in the air, and basically you can drop a ladder down and pop down
that
anywhere.
Famous concept art where the ladder's hanging down from the Highwind and they're on the grass.
And that it would basically be, that would be how you go to anywhere.
You're up high and there's a version of the world that's maybe miniaturized a bit.
Yeah.
And then when you drop down the ladder, there's a loading screen hidden, and now you're on the ground, wherever.
But they'll hide that loading screen by,
I think that's how I hope they do it.
It seems
is
clear.
that you can drop ladder anywhere with grass or something.
That there's probably it's too rocky to land there.
Well, in the
you
original
wouldn't,
game, it's you can't
But,
land on certain types.
Most
of...
places you could. Yeah, that would and then you'd be able to explore the Highwind itself.
Dude, and the secrets you could hide would be incredible.
That's they did so much in this game, but they still left so much on the table.
That is one thing that I would like in the third one is, like we said earlier, one quibble we have is this game holds your hand a little too much to find the secrets. And I think by the end we agreed that if they had just gotten rid of the chocobos and the owls that lead you to the things, it would be amazing to explore and find all the stuff organically on your own and have to.
And
search
it would have been
out.
hard when you get to a place like Gungaga, which is really difficult to traverse.
Would have been hard to actually find everything and made exploration actually rewarding. And I would like in the third one some more esoteric secrets akin to the Calm Traveler in the original game, where there's an NPC who just says something a little bit weird, and that's a clue, and not an NPC who gives you a quest that populates a log that you then go follow the marker and complete, but something that is just, once you figure it out or read how to do it, you're you just can't even understand how the pieces would have come together. I miss that from those older games. But I might not get that. That's just an older design philosophy that most people don't seem to appreciate now.
Yeah. Well, we'll see. One thing that you've said about this game is that it feels like a theme park of FF7, and I wonder if that will continue in the next one.
I think it will.
Probably.
And it's that's not a bad thing. There's much worse ways it could turn out. But it's I wish the story were a little more potent.
Yeah.
And
I wish they hadn't. Those changes didn't work for me.
Yeah. But man, what a game.
Yeah, what an accomplishment.
What a
an unbelievable
franchise.
thing. I didn't regret a single minute of that.
No, me neither. I love it.
So go play it. We recommend
I like
it.
how I started this by saying it bypassed my critical brain, and then I'm sitting here going, they fucked up the story.
And
I didn't cry.
And Sid is wrong.
Well, that's the thing. I cried when we replayed the original.
Yeah. No, it was
I did
really
not feel shit when we played
I
this.
felt a lot of things, but it was more the wonder of we're in the gold saucer.
Happy.
Look around, look at it.
I felt
yeah, but it
enjoyment,
wasn't
but it wasn't
the poignant kind of thing.
I didn't feel oh my god, death is so sad.
Exactly.
Man, very ending. The very ending where Aerith gets to go around as a ghost and say goodbye to everyone.
I hate it.
I hate
think
it.
it should be thrown away.
That is it's so weak compared to the reality of death.
I know. I mean, we also just played FF9 and spent a while,
that
which
game's
is
all about
takes death very seriously and has deep things to say about it that resonate. They had this in the bag.
am really... If Aerith appears throughout the last game as a Force Ghost, that's just gonna... I might not be able to swallow that.
Well, I do think that it won't have a good ending.
Just to hit it again, I really, really hate the cup game with the black and white materia. I hate that the game ends with us supposed to be thinking about...
We're supposed to
how
have
did
like, a
he get the
mystery.
black materia? Where did it come from? Like, who cares? It could just be in the temple like it was in the fucking original. Anyway, whatever.
I know. I feel the same way.
But Ryan, the real black materia was taken by Sephiroth for safekeeping another world that they have access to because he didn't want their plan to work again the way it worked in the first one. Because since Sephiroth knows everything that's happened, he has a new plan to try to beat them. But because the live stream is on their side, he's not...
Well, and that makes it good if it's that complicated and confusing.
Anyway,
Whatever.
What a great game.
What a downright masterpiece. So go check out our full playthrough on Patreon right now. All 45 parts up through, or more than that, almost 50, through the finale of FF7 Rebirth. And also, if you're not a Patreon, you can watch those right now. They are starting to air on the public feed on the YouTube channel.
And we're also still playing Oblivion.
Yep,
We'll
go
probably,
to the Patreon to watch us play Oblivion.
Depending on when you're listening to this, we may have started some other things too. You never know what's on the Patreon.
Well, we should say we are planning to play FF3 very soon.
Yeah, we're about
and
to
start
buckle
doing
down
the real
and get
production.
FF3 started, and that's going to be a shorter game than 9 or 8. So we don't know when the season will start airing, but
It will be later this year.
Keep that in mind that it'll probably be a quicker turnaround than in the past. I know people get really impatient, and this show takes way too long to make.
Yeah.
But that's
We
just how
understand.
it is. That's how we make it.
So thank you for your patience, and FF3 will be coming soon.
Yep.
Thank you all for listening to the show. We really appreciate you all, and with that, do we have a dessert?
I don't have a dessert. We don't have a bunch of recordings we've been doing that we're to pull
Oh yeah,
from
we don't
of
have
extra
like
shit,
clips
so-
to use for the dessert. Okay, so we could just the end of episode right now.